Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag how I got custody. Guess what I'm going to do today? I'm going to do stuff that none of you guys do, and none of these other guys do, and none of these father's rights groups ever do, and that's why the system stays the way that it is. And if you guys do the stuff that what I'm going to do right now, if you guys did this kind of stuff, the system would change, but nobody's doing it because I'm the one who gives a damn. So, this dad went in front of a judge, and the judge granted a restraining order against his ex. But they gave custody to the domestic violence perpetrating mother. And then they said it's in the best interest of the child. And the father said, well, the law says that it's in the best interest of the child to protect from a domestic violence perpetrator. And this guy says, no, I'm doing what's in the best interest of the child. The child is a bond with the mother. All this bigoted, anti-father, radical feminist bullshit. Okay? So what am I going to do about it? Because most of you guys would sit around and just whine, cry, pout, and piss and moan. I'm going to actually do something about it that will rattle their cage and make them start changing their mind. This is the problem with the family court system. Everything is done as secret. Nobody goes out and protests. Nobody has any balls to protest. If you look at my video on YouTube where I'm showing you guys how I protest, I'm putting case numbers out there, or I'm giving judges names and telling everybody what they did in the case to embarrass the judges so they stop doing this. All these cases are all secret and nobody talks about them. They don't get on the news. They're not talked about or protested in front of the court, so nobody knows anything. I want everybody at the courthouse to know when a judge screws up. So the judge walks into his workplace and everybody's looking at him weird, like, you're the guy who gave custody to a mom who has a sex offender boyfriend? What's wrong with you, sicko? So what I'm going to do in this case, Washington law says that if somebody has committed domestic violence, the court must put restrictions on them. They didn't put any, not only did they not put restrictions on the mother, they gave the mother custody and gave the dad visitation. Because some stupid-ass idiot walked in with his bigoted mind. Just like in Jim Crow South or in World War II. If a judge had an Asian person in front of them, they're afraid that they're a spy or whatever, and so they'll rule against them based on their bigotry. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let this father's rights group that's almost dead up here in Washington know what's going on, and they're going to write a letter. And, I've worked with them before, so, if I write a letter, they're going to look at me as a joke or whatever. But the dad's scared to write a letter. No other dad's going to do this stuff. You guys don't do this stuff. Father's rights movement groups don't do this stuff. And this is what it takes to change this stuff, and nobody's doing it. I'm going to tell these guys what happened, and they're going to write a letter to the judges. Remember, this is a pro tem judge. That means he's a lawyer who comes in and substitutes. Okay? So pay close attention here. They're going to write a letter to the judges who decide who graduates from being a pro tem substitute, or the judges get to decide who are the family law commissioners. And this lawyer probably wants to be a family law commissioner and have a plush cush job with state benefits, making $150,000 a year by sitting up there and doing nothing but having a God complex. So they're going to write them and say, this guy is saying it's in the best interest of the child to be around a domestic violence perpetrator, which violates all the public policy in Washington, all the doctrines, all the legal standard. And I'm going to tell them to tell the judges that if you don't fire this guy or say he can never do this again, then we're going to cite this case and we're going to tell all of our followers, because they still have a following or people who hit them up, and they still have a mailing list. They're just too lazy to do anything about anything because they only got one guy answering emails for the most part. We're going to tell all of our followers and all the men that this judge said it's in the best interest of the child for a domestic violence perpetrator to have custody. So every dad who has a domestic violence protection order, they can not only get visitation with their kid, they can get custody according to this guy. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to blackball him and fire him. And it's going to send a message to his punk ass. And then I'm personally going to write a letter to the law firm that's been around for 20 or 30 years and say this punk ass bitch sellout is up here saying that children should live with the domestic violence perpetrator. And not only that, this case is crazy because the ex-wife, his sister-in-law, also has a domestic violence case against her. So she's the main babysitter. So this guy is saying this child should be allowed around violence in violation of the mandatory laws that restrict kids from parents. Also, I told the dad, he called the cops because the original criminal court restraining order said that he had custody of the child and the mother wouldn't hand the child over. And the cops came and said, oh, it's a civil matter. And the guy didn't know how to talk to them, didn't know how to read the restraining order and say, this is mandatory law. They're committing a crime. I understand it's a civil matter, but it's also a crime. Don't you understand that? If I'm a dad, that means I can go and violate a protection order. You won't arrest me? See, when you take what they're saying and you give them an extreme example and use their own words, then they look stupid. Then you make them feel crunchy and change their behavior sometimes. But this time, I'm going to thoroughly embarrass this asshole because in a private hearing, if it wasn't for this see, this is why you guys need to stop pissing around and twiddling your thumbs and not doing jack shit and waiting until you get royally screwed 8 months later. And then you call me after you spent $50,000 on an attorney, or you watch my videos, you don't totally grasp them, and you try and half-ass it and go to court and get royally screwed, then you want to get some advice. You should be getting my help right from the beginning as soon as you find out about me so you know everything you need to know. And then if you don't contact me ever again, fine. But you'll be able to understand the concept. Like this guy has been watching my videos, and he still missed a bunch of stuff that he should have been doing from the beginning of his case. He's behind the 8 ball. This is why this stuff, I want to pound my head against the wall. Somebody sees my stuff, they don't get a hold of me, they're behind the 8 ball, they get royally screwed. If they would have talked to me before, we would have known how to talk to the cops. He'd probably have custody of his kid right now, most likely. I can't guarantee or say anything. I would never guarantee anything, but most likely he'd have custody of his kid and he wouldn't have to worry about this stuff. But also, if he didn't get a hold of me at all, like the vast majority of you don't, because either you're afraid of me because I talk harsh in my videos. I don't talk harsh to people like this. I tell people to wake the hell up in the videos, and if they want to run away and get scared or they want to complain, then those are the bitch-ass cowards I don't want to deal with, so I weed them out. But if this guy didn't call me, I wouldn't have known to alert this father's rights group, and I'm going to write a letter, and this guy might get fired from the law firm. This is how you ruin these people's lives and destroy their lives, by getting them fired because they're sitting in a protective bubble and they're sitting here abusing children and trafficking children and destroying children's lives, and nobody is doing jack shit about it. Dad talked today, that fat, slobby, fruity little bitch-made coward who just whines and cries about, oh, child support sucks and this sucks. He's got his wife on Facebook talking about what a narcissist he is, so he might be an abuser himself. I forget what his name is. The father's rights movement, fruity coward little bitches. All those guys are sitting around just doing meetings and talking about, we're going to change the law. And dads have been talking about that for 60 years, and no laws have changed except 4 states have 50-50 presumptions in them. But the women can still overcome that presumption by claiming domestic violence or child abuse. What should be in the law is a 50-50 automatic presumption unless there's a criminal conviction of child support or domestic violence, not a civil finding. That's why these fathers' rights groups that actually get this legislation pushed after 5 or 7 or 10 years of protesting, they put all that energy in legislation, and they never put half an inkling of that energy into their court case because they're too busy sitting at home on their labia and crying and bitching and moaning about how hard the court system is. But they got all this time and energy to go and fight the entire system. Or I got guys who call me up, I want to sue them in federal court. I want to have a constitutional case law lawsuit against them. I want to destroy this court system and upend them. I know I could do it. You stupid jackass. There's been 60 years of fathers' rights groups that haven't made a dent in the system. Why don't you go get your kid and then fight the system? We got it all backwards. So if this guy wouldn't have told me about this, we wouldn't have been able to rattle this guy's cage, and he would still be a pro tem, and maybe he graduates to become a commissioner. But all these bitch-ass, fruity little gay boy faggots in the fathers' rights movement, and Dad Talk Today, and 50-50 Dad, all these guys just posting memes about dads are people too, and the system is biased, and whine, bitch-ass cry, moan, and the only people they're talking to is other victims. How the hell is the system going to change? The way it's going to change is if people do what I'm about to do right now, and this group is going to do, writing a letter saying this guy should never be a family law commissioner again, and hopefully they get rid of him. I know an attorney who got rid of a commissioner that was a full-time commissioner and got her fired just because he got screwed by her and he raised enough stink. If these fathers' rights groups would use their pull to go and do stuff they need to do, and I'm done dealing with this stuff because I worked in a couple different fathers' rights groups and these guys never did any of this stuff. I won in court. They kind of didn't want to listen to me. They wanted to whine, cry, piss, and moan. I've gone back to fathers' rights groups. All they do is want to whine, cry, piss, and moan and spoon and dry hump each other and kiss each other and whisper sweet nothings to make each other feel good. And they walk away with no strategy on how to fight or change this. I'm going to do something about this case right here and now. And the father isn't doing it. I got to do it. You should do